Mandela Catalogue and its effect on horror. My name is Milo Lee.
I'm Chris.
And I'm Cal.
And we will be analyzing the Mandela Catalogue.
Which is, it's a horror series on YouTube that falls into the analog horror genre, which is mainly like VHS tapes, or the narratives told in a series of VHS tapes that are uploaded to YouTube with context and plot that aren't exactly noticeable right away, but the more you analyze the details, the more the story comes together.
Yeah, like you can look back at context clues that it gives you, and things will piece together later, right?
It's basically a big puzzle.
Yep, it's like composed of several middle-length videos that you kind of piece together. And the purpose of the films basically are to basically, you know, spark fear in its audience and show them like a new sort of I guess genre of horror. And they kind of explore that on the YouTube series. They use a lot of editing and like vintage kind of aspects to the videos, and basically just like leaves you with a new kind of fear of, I don't know, what could be.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtle things that are picked up on that you can look at later whenever you rewatch it that make a lot more sense, such as they use the effects of red herring when they explain like these alternate beings that can kill and mimic a person, and they don't tell you that.
It's heavily implied, basically.
It's an implication, and they'll tell you that later, but first they tell you about like a small storm that's brewing, and they're not telling you about the bigger problem at hand. Or there's a slogan they use, think.
Yeah, there's like a set of steps you should take when basically encountering these entities they talk about, which are called alternates. And they can appear like humans, but they're really not, and they have dangerous psychological powers that you basically need to shield yourself against, which kind of makes, you know, them really dangerous and scary. And so there's a set of rules to what you should do, I guess, when you encounter one. So that's what the think slogan is. It's a set of steps you do to guard yourself, basically.
Really, the think steps aren't even very useful.
Yeah.
Not at all. I mean, it's theorized that the think steps were created by the alternates so that you're more weak to them.
Yeah.
That's a whole loop of bad.
A lot to get into. Anyway.
So it's influenced internet horror by kind of showing us a new route that you can take to scare people. There's small little subtle implications that build up over time. Nothing just immediately jumping out at you or things to make your skin crawl. It's just things that don't look right or don't make sense, and it's too many of them to be a coincidence. So it lets your mind run free and imagination take hold.
Yeah, I think it strays less from the usual kind of Hollywood horror of like jump scares and special effects. I mean, they do have special effects, but mainly they use a lot of interpretation and kind of, your imagination instead. Yeah. It's like a different kind of fear.
It's kind of like the fear of the unknown.
Really, it really is, yeah. Because they don't show exactly like what like a scary monster looks like, or they don't have jump scares. They have more like an overwhelming sense of dread of like something's like hiding in your home. It's like watching you, and it's like it can take, you know, control of you. It's kind of more of that.
Yeah. But the Mandela Catalogue wasn't the first internet series to do this. There was one actually before this called Local 58 that did a pretty similar thing, but didn't gain as much traction, which probably influenced the Mandela Catalogue a lot, because Local 58 kind of kickstarted this whole subgenre, which Mandela Catalogue falls under. So in a way, the Mandela Catalogue is an inspired piece of art from Local 58 and other probably obscure.
Yeah, it's kind of like the predecessor
Yeah.
to the Mandela Catalogue. Didn't have as much quality or time put into it, didn't have the same effect, but it had the same skeletal structure of the horror, which really accelerated the future of it as we look into Route 58 and how it built Mandela Catalogue, and how the Mandela Catalogue has branched out into hundreds of these different stories or examples that are all a new and nice twist to horror that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
I mean, they do really play on the security aspect. They send out broadcasts and films to show you that like you're not safe and that there's probably something in your home, and that really plays with the minds of normal people, because these alternates they're really intelligent, and they play with the vulnerability of the weak minds of normal people, and so they'll send out frightening messages and like threats that really invoke fear in like everyone. So
Of course, it's really straw man in the end, because whenever they send out those messages, those are really to like cull people down, to stop them from being able to defend themselves, makes them vulnerable, and then they come out from the side and attack people.
I saw this one thing about it, like analyzing it, and it basically said that the whole Mandela Catalogue is a metaphor for the information age, basically, because in the story, in the Mandela Catalogue, these alternates have existed since biblical times,
yeah,
but they weren't really an issue until the 1980s, which is really weird, because it just seems like random. They just kind of like appear and then start wreaking havoc, even though they've already once existed. But it kind of draws parallels to the information age that we live in now, because around the 80s, we developed technologies that were spread information around quicker, like the internet and better television.
I think there's like one instance first when it appeared through a kind of an angel, like, and it deceived people, telling them that I guess it was the Christ, but it tricked them. Mm-hmm. And so like that's the earliest point that it started, I guess, fooling people, taking control of them.
And that has been quite influential with horror, and it's developed into something that we see today as one of the more quality forms of scaring. Of course, leaves a lot for the future.
But I think this type of storytelling is more, it gets the message across easier than modern horror movies, because I think the theme of it is like being surrounded by awful things, pretty much. Like we have our phones and all that, and these screens that give us bad news pretty much like all the time. Mm-hmm. And which like people back then, they just, they were just all in a little bubble, which I don't think is a message you would be able to convey in a horror movie like a Blumhouse horror movie, because of the way like they present their rhetoric. And
I think they just focus on like a shorter message, kind of more simple, like scary kind of figures, but like this probably has a deeper message, because like you need to be very like careful on how easily you're tricked by things telling you different entities or wherever you get your information from.
As Chris is saying, the Mandela Catalogue is really showing people that you can't just trust what you read or see. You have to make your own inferences and deductions based on what you know, what you can 100% with certain evidence believe to be true. And that can help you in just life. Anyway, that was the Mandela Catalogue and its effect on modern analog horror. I'm Milo.
I'm Chris.
I'm Cal.
And
that's the podcast.
Yep.